Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that enforced racial segregation in the southern United States. These laws mandated the segregation of public schools, public places, and public transportation, and the segregation of restrooms, restaurants, and drinking fountains for whites and blacks. In 1954, the Supreme Court determined that segregation of students violated the 14th Amendment, and they declared the practice unconstitutional in the case of Brown versus the Board of Education. The case was taken to the Supreme Court by Thurgood Marshall and several other attorneys. Thurgood Marshall went on to become the first African-American Supreme Court Justice. In 1955, Black seamstress Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man on a Montgomery, Alabama city bus. The leaders of the local Black community organized a bus boycott that began the day Parks was convicted of violating the segregation laws. Led by a young Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the boycott lasted more than a year. The boycott ended only when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. Over the next half-century, Parks became a nationally recognized symbol of dignity and strength in the struggle to end entrenched racial segregation. In 1963, African American leaders called for a march on Washington. There at the Lincoln Memorial, approximately 250,000 people demanded improved social and economic opportunity and equality under the law for African Americans. On the steps of the memorial, Dr. King delivered his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." Lyndon B. Johnson became President of the United States after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. One of Johnson's notable achievements was when he signed the Civil Rights Act. This legislation ended discrimination based on race by ensuring equal access to public accommodation, and it included language that called for equal hiring regardless of race. In 1965, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. This legislation outlawed state laws that required poll taxes and literacy tests, which had been a method to deny African Americans the right to vote. In the South, the 15th Amendment could not be circumvented. Cesar Chavez was a labor leader and organizer that helped to start the National Farm Workers Association in 1962. Like Dr. King, he stressed nonviolent forms of protest such as boycotts, marches, and hunger strikes to achieve his goals. His most famous boycott was against grape growers, and his efforts improved life and working conditions for many of the nation's working poor.